Good morning. We are in the St. Francis Garden here at Binkley Church in Chapel Hill to celebrate, to remember, to reflect, and to honor the life, the well-lived life of James Austin Tippit. I'm sure that when you learned in early January of this year that Jim had passed away too suddenly to comprehend, your thoughts turned to his dear and cherished Deborah, and you reflected on what a huge loss this has made in your life and in the life of your own family. I'm fairly certain you remembered shared adventures, roads that you traveled together, laughter and tears across the years of your friendship and your relationship. Now, I must say that with great regret, I did not meet Jim, but boy, I wish I had. Those of you watching sure did, and by way of the many calls, cards, letters, messages, Facebook posts sent and shared with Deborah, you reflected on a man that you described as authentic, kind, funny, a dry sense of humor, supportive, a storyteller, a heart of gold, true, honest, personable, the go-to person. And how would you like this said at the end of your life? That you were one who did good deeds with no need for recognition. A character with good character. As we gather either in homes or wherever you're watching this, I'm wondering if it was as a neighbor that you knew Jim the best. And I bet you're wondering, who is going to provide neighborhood patrols now? Who's going to remove our snow from the driveway? Who's going to get their chainsaw out to let us get out? Was it through his long association, 38 years, with Sears? Or how about through and with Deborah, following and going through her academic career at Meredith College? Was it on the golf course? Did you witness just a few short months ago his 2 holes-in-one in 1 month? Hunting or fishing? Did you dip a line in the water with Jim? Did you camp out in a deer stand with Jim? Jim defied stereotyping, I'm told, and simple categorization. Bright, curious, enlightened, funny, courageous, and strong. Our service today will include hearing from family, friends, some mentored in significant ways across the years, knowing and loving Jim, and family, and a longtime pastoral friend. You will hear jazz, one of his favorite musical expressions, and you'll be invited into the beauty of nature in various locations. But this location matters too. We're in the Binkley Garden, as I said. Life began in a garden, and at the end of our lives, we return to a garden. The poet Rumi, we travel from garden to garden. And when you do so, you do it with good friends and loving family. And that is what we remember about Jim Tippit today. So may the peace of Christ be with you.
When I think of Jim, I think about the great outdoors. Jim was a man's man who loved being in nature. Whether he was alone in his tree stand deer hunting, whether he was with his friends out golfing, he loved being in creation. That's why I thought it was such a wonderful tribute and testimony to Jim when Deborah decided to honor his memory by scattering some of his ashes at his favorite deer stand. My wife Kelly and I were grateful to be there that day and to share one of our favorite psalms, a psalm written by another outdoorsman, another man's man who protected his father's sheep from the lion and the bear, the great shepherd of Israel, King David. In Psalm 23, David wrote these words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for he is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. He's prepared a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. He's anointed my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life, and now I dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you so much for Jim and his legacy, the man that he was, Lord, and we ask that we might capture some of his spirit to enjoy the great outdoors, your creation. We do pray your blessing and your peace upon Deborah and upon all these friends that are watching. And we ask these things for it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Anthony Dawson wrote a poem entitled Remember Me, and I'd like to read it to you today. Speak of me as you have always done. Remember the good times, laughter and fun. Share the happy memories we've made. Do not let them wither or fade. I'll be with you in the summer's sun and when the winter's chill has come. I'll be the voice that whispers in the breeze. I'm peaceful now, put your mind at ease. I've rested my eyes and gone to sleep, but memories we've shared are yours to keep. Sometimes our final days may be a test, but remember me when I was at my best. Although things may not be the same, don't be afraid to use my name. Let your sorrow last for a while, comfort each other, and try to smile. I've lived a life filled with joy and fun. Live on now, make me proud of what you'll become. Jim, we remember you. We remember you in the blueness of the skies over a golf course. We remember you when we hear the crunching of leaves under our feet during deer season. We remember you when one of your jokes comes to our minds. I remember you when I see the cabinet door that held your nightly cocktail ritual. I remember you when I see an old red truck. And I'll always remember the conversations and card games around the dinner table. Thank you, Jim, for your kindness, your humor, and your friendship. But most of all, I thank you for being a wonderful husband to my friends. Cheers, Jim. We love you and we miss you.
I I was lucky enough to move in across the street from Jim and Deborah Tippett when I was just 5 years old and live on that cul-de-sac with them for the rest of my childhood. Jim taught me how to fish, and he taught me so much more than how to fish. He taught me what it meant to be a good neighbor and a lot about what it meant to be a good friend, to be a good man, that you could be competent and confident and self-assured but not take yourself too seriously, that you should help someone who needs help but also give them a good-natured ribbing if they deserve it for what they did to get in the predicament in the first place. And he certainly taught me a lot about how to tell a good story, mainly by example. And while that's something I certainly already knew, I think I realized it even more thinking of favorite Jim stories that would be fitting for this occasion. And, you know, I have no shortage of Jim stories that I certainly love to tell, from Jim taking down a big buck from the comfort of his home office while forgetting to mute the conference call, or the many hijinks and misunderstandings that stemmed from the ironically named pet cemetery he had established in our neighborhood, to the young upstarts at his office who were younger than his favorite pair of shoes. A lot of my favorite Jim memories aren't really much of a story, because there maybe not much happened, maybe there wasn't any dialogue. They were just those moments when we were out fishing together, or walking in the woods, or in his pickup truck going on some adventure that was so exciting to a young boy. And it's those moments when I'm out in nature on a hike or next to a river or lake, maybe with a line in the water, maybe not, and it's just still, quiet, perfect, just like it should be. Breeze blowing through the trees, maybe on the water. And whenever I'm in one of those moments, Jim's right there with me. The first thing that pops into my head, because Jim's the one that let just a 5-year-old kid from the neighborhood in on the secret of those moments. The secret of a beautiful moment in nature, alone or shared with a friend, with a intimacy that really only exists in silence and without words. And that's something that I'll always have, and that I have no doubt that for the rest of my life, every time I get to savor one of those beautiful moments that life gives us, Jim will be right there next to me. And I just want to thank Jim for the lessons and the outings and the stories and the laughs, but most of all for those moments that he let me share. So thanks, Jim, and thank you everyone who Jim cared about and who cared about Jim.
When I think of Jim, one word comes to mind: loyal. He came into our lives 45 years ago and never left. He and Dale were such good buddies at work at Sears, hunting, fishing, and years of illness that never got in the way of friendship. After Dale's death, Jim became my constant lifeline. He always came to check on me, never once complained if I was a pain. We drank coffee, solved world issues, and laughed about old times. He could be kind and tough when needed. Jim was not just a friend, he was family.
morning. My name is Wayne, and this is a series of snippets of being and knowing Jim for 35 years or so. First meeting Jim, or as the case may be, Jim meeting me, are two separate stories. Because I used to do security work at the Sears store at Northgate, where Jim was a security person. So he met me through a security window, and I had no idea who he was until after we moved out into the country and moved into a cabin, and one day this guy shows up and knocks on the door. He said, "I'm Jim. I'm a hunter, and I'd like to hunt on your property if it would be okay." And I said, "Well, I have a little child, and I may hunt myself some, so I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that." And he said, "Well, that's okay." And he turned around and he started to leave. And then he said, "I know who you are. You used to come into Sears." And I said, "That's true." He said, "I've met you. I've known you for years." I said, "You did? I've never seen you before in my life." And so there we met. So we'll go into hunting. As we know by now, Jim was a hunter. And you might think that hunting is going into the woods, crawling up into a tree, sitting in a stand and waiting for someone to walk by and shoot it. It could be further from the truth. This is not how it works at all. You go into the woods, you go up to a tree, and you turn around and you look, and there is nothing. There's no sounds, there's no birds, there's no squirrels, it's silent. What you don't know is when you get into the stand, you have to settle yourself. You have to be quiet. You have to be still. You have to listen. And as you quiet yourself, 20 or 30 minutes later, all of a sudden you'll hear a little rustle. It'll be a squirrel. Or you'll hear a chickadee, chickadee. And as you get quiet, more sounds will come through time. And you'll sit for hours. And sometimes a deer will come. Most likely it'll be a doe and a little deer. And you'll just sit still, silent, watching with your eyes, not moving your body. Because now there are 4 eyes looking at you. Any movement will be detected instantly. And then they mill around and walk off. That'll be the end of your day for the most part, time after time. But once in a while, you'll see something and the magic will happen. And Jim was an expert in doing that. In the afternoons, mid-afternoons, Jim would occasionally come and visit. And he'd come in and he'd sit down and he would tell us the adventures of his day. And he'd say, "Well, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. I went and got my truck inspected today. I had to go somewhere because the light was on and we had to figure out how to get an inspection with the light on." And then he would say, not infrequently, "Just came back from the grocery store. They had chicken for sale for 79 cents a pound. Don't you think that was a great deal? You ought to get right over there and get some of that right now." One of the last things that happened was voicemail from Jim. "Hi, bud. It's about 10:45 on Wednesday. I'm headed to the dump. Got anything? I'll be over in a few minutes and get it out of your shed. See ya. Bye now. Later." And so it was with Jim. If you ever needed anything, he would be there. Anytime, day or night, he would be there. and do whatever was needed. And I would say it's been a pleasure to know you, Jim. It's been taxing, but I love you to pieces anyway. So have a good rest. Bye now.
I never knew a love story like the one between my Uncle Jim and my Aunt Dee, who most of you know as Deborah Tippett, but I've always called her my Aunt Dee. Oh, and seemingly an unlikely pair, she with a refined and cultured demeanor, a PhD, global inspirational speaker. My Aunt Dee exemplifies grace and elegance with a giant dose of class. Uncle Jim was more like Uncle Buck from John Hughes' 1989 movie starring John Candy. You know, he could speak redneck. He loved to watch the NASCAR circuit. He was an avid hunter and outdoorsman with a wickedly sharp sense of humor. And the two shared a lifetime of love and admiration of one another and made it last over 47 years. I was born in March of 1974, first girl born on the Tippett side of the family. My Uncle Jim's adoration for me as a child born to his sister, Carolyn, was as if I was his own. And that affection never waned my entire life. He was another father to me. Addressing his passing is just as hard as losing my own father, only with delayed grief, because I cannot get to those who matter most to feel the reality of this great loss. I miss him so tremendously that I cannot get in front of a camera to talk about him without completely crumbling. I realize I'll never hear another inappropriate joke told, punctuated by that signature snicker. I'll never hear him call me Suge again, in that syrupy southern drawl. Being from Texas, I can clearly hear a distinction in the accent from my own. I will never hear him, let me tell you something. Again, which I knew was the start of a masterfully set up story delivered in a way only Uncle Jim could. I'll never again see the glint in his eyes when he would purposefully sabotage and exploit the undeniable stupidity of robocallers and witless Costco shoppers who happened to cross his path. I can no longer share our long-distance debate about whether or not peeps are an actual food to be consumed. I realized my Aunt Dee lost the love of her life. This was actually the first thought that came to my mind, and it still crushes my heart. The love my Uncle Jim and Aunt Dee shared is such a gift to have witnessed. I'm so lucky to be included in their family. I'm so grateful my offspring was able to meet him and appreciate some of the finer things in life, like the donut run and the red truck, rite of passage shared by many a young friend to be lucky enough to be in Uncle Jim's radius. My fondest memories include quiet lifetimes and moments when I would visit. Each moment was cherished. From his ginger ale and bourbon at cocktail hour, including a dance or two, to his favorite Motown classics, to watching The Walking Dead and Trevor Noah together, I soaked up every minute I could. Although geography kept us from having more time in each other's presence, I never felt I couldn't just show up and be taken in and loved without question. He afforded me that honor in his life. I learned from him what integrity is. I learned from him what loyalty means. I learned from him what love is. Tomorrow would be his 72nd birthday. I plan to have a bourbon and ginger ale at 5 p.m. and listen to some Motown. Might even get up and dance a bit. He deserves it.
I'm Charlie.
I'm Kevin. And I'm Roger. We're out here playing golf today.
We're trying to.
We're kind of like the Bobsey triplets.
This is the 15th hole at Hillendale, and this is where Jim got the first hole-in-one on this course. And then about 5 days later, on the 17th, he got another hole-in-one. So needless to say, we played here a lot afterwards. Jim got to the point where he was just too dang good. Jim competitive spirit. He'd love to come from behind and let you know he was chasing you and catching you. And we don't miss so much him whipping our butts all the time, but we do miss him all the time.
Jim was very supportive of everybody. So, you know, if you hit a good shot, good shot. And if you didn't hit a good shot, he'd turn around and look the other way. So, you know, but he helped me a lot with my game personally, especially with my pitching and putting. And the same as Roger. Charlie, not so much. But
it was always, go get a lesson, go get a lesson.
Jim, our buddy, is missed every single day. Every day we come out here, we have an empty chair in one of the carts. And it's usually us three. And he was a great friend. And he called me a dumb many times, but that's okay. That's all right.
I was willing to share the wealth.
But the one thing Jim would say, if it was an odd day when somebody was away, whoever was riding alone, Jim say, "You're riding with all your friends today."
Yep. He was a gas. He was a lot of fun. And he's missed a bunch, a lot.
Okay, Jim. Didn't get a birdie on the 15th, but the hole before, I got a birdie.
Hey, Jim, this is from all the Duffers. We miss you.
Hey, Jim. This is from Roger. Nice hole-in-one back there, buddy. Miss you, pal.
When our family moved to Durham in 1967, my sister Deborah was not a happy camper. At 15 years old, the last thing she wanted to do was to change high schools and to move away from all of her friends. Well, it was not too long after her move that she met Jim, and he changed everything. I can remember this loud sports car pulling up front of the house, and out popped a skinny teenager with a big smile. He not only won Deborah's heart, but mine as well. At 8 years old, I was in awe of his bigger-than-life stories, and I believed every word. As all stories go, reality set in. My second memory of Jim was of anguish and disgust, as he told me in great detail about going hunting. I interpreted this as he was killing Bambi's mother. I would run through the house crying, "Murderer, murderer." One day he told me that he would bring me a rabbit's foot. I was so excited and delighted because I thought he was going to bring me a keychain like my grandmother would bring me back from the mountains on one of her trips. You can imagine my horror when he pulled out a freshly cut foot, ankle and all. I can hear Jim roaring with laughter. Years passed, and I began to understand that he really loved the outdoors, animals, and me. A couple years ago, I was home with Deborah and Jim for Mother's Day, as our tradition went. Deborah and I would go out to the florist or the nursery, and we would buy flowers and come back home and plant them. I had just finished on the front porch, and I ran out of soil. So I went to the garage, looked around, and I found a bag of soil, half-used soil. I picked it up and carried it outside, and when I sat it down on the table, I realized that I should look inside before I put my hand in. I looked inside, I peeked in, and there was a ball of fur. I screamed at the top of my lungs, and Jim came running in to the rescue as usual. And he looked down inside, and with his big gloved hands, he reached down and he pulled out a little baby possum. He very carefully took the possum out of the house, through the house, down to the creek. And Deborah and I looked at each other and said, "Why didn't he just throw this off the deck?" He came back in and we questioned him. And Jim said, "It's just a little baby. It would have broken his back if I threw it off the deck." He had such a loving kindness towards animals, and it really showed. Recently, I interviewed Deborah for a class presentation that I was doing concerning the different stages of life that we go through. She told me that when she met and fell in love with Jim, that he brought her love and security that she had never felt before. Jim felt the same about Deborah. He took care of her, supported her through high school, college, master's and doctorate degrees. He took care of her in the good and the not so good. He took care of her, took her through world travel, surgeries, multiple cancer treatments. He was always by her side. I live in Florida. I've been there for 14 years. But before I left, I promised our mother that if I was ever needed, that I could be home within a matter of hours. Well, on January 8th, Deborah called and said, "I need you home now." And within a few hours, I was in the hospital room with she and Jim. Jim could not talk to us, but we held his hand and we talked to him. I know that his biggest concern was not dying, but leaving Deborah behind. I promised him that Deborah would be taken care of. I could look in his eyes and I knew that he heard me and that he knew that all would be well. The love that he had for her was very obvious, a love very few of us have. They were blessed to find each other over 50 years ago.
It's a possum. Okay. Why don't you take the bag out, Jim? Oh my God. I could have put my hand in that. No, he's bringing it inside. Are you really? Don't bring that thing in here, please. No.
Jim, I'm not gonna put him on.
Just go out the house before we have a stroke. I have you on video. It's okay. Get out now before we put something.
You surely must know magic, girl, 'cause you changed my life. It was dull and ordinary, but you made it sunny and bright. Now, I was blessed the day I found you. Gonna build my whole world around you. You're everything, good girl, and you're all that matters to me. When my way was dark and troubles were near, your love provided the light so I could see, girl. Just knowing your love was near when times were bad kept the world from closing in on me, girl. I was blessed the day I found you. Gonna build my whole world around you. You're everything, good girl, and you're all that matters to me. Baby, you're part of every thought that I think each day. Your name is in every phrase my lips sing. Every dream I dream is about you. Honey, I can't live without you. Baby, you're my everything. You're my everything. Yes, you are. You're my everything, girl. You're the girl I sing about in every love song I sing. You're my everything. You're my winter, baby, my summer, my fall and spring. You're my everything. I was blessed the day I found you. Gonna build my whole world around you. You're everything, good girl, and you're all Yes, you are. You're my everything, girl.
A reading from Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 15 and 22. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, God has put a sense of past and future into their minds. Yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been. That which is to be already is. And God seeks out what has gone by. So I saw that there is nothing better than all should enjoy their work, for that is their lot. Who can bring them to see what will be after them? This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, if you were at Durham High School when Jim and his cohort and some others of us could be found in the smoking corral, you likely heard the birds' song as I was saying those words, turn, turn, turn. As I read these verses, I bet they were going around in your head. In those days, it seemed as the world was turning and turning with themes of war, peace, protest, love, trying out new ways of being, thinking, and growing into adulthood. Turn, turn, turn seemed to capture the many questions that were reshaping life for Jim and for all of his classmates. In the midst of all that was changing for young Americans everywhere, Jim Tippett knew how to navigate those waters, swim well, and thrive. Jim knew where to locate the best deer hunting stand, the best fishing spots, the best golfing buddies, the best hiking in Duke Forest, the best beach music for dancing on the coast, and the best girl to marry for the rest of his life. He was a man who lived by the seasons of his life, negotiating each one with a sense of purpose, a plan, and a sense of humor that would disarm the most stuffy and cause the biggest laughs at anyone's party. Jim was a friend to many, both known and unknown. Growing up in East Durham in the 50s and the 60s, Jim's childhood and experiences would sound strange to those gangbangers and gentrification people growing up there today. In those days, the community was enriched by mills and machinery manufacturing, vibrant churches, and a sense of caring for each other's children. Honesty, integrity, and a sense of responsibility were ingrained in Jim and many of the children there. I believe that Jim embodied the best that East Durham offered to Durham at large. I believe that Jim gave his family and friends, community, and neighborhood the best he had to give. I hope that his friends and family now look back on the seasons of Jim's short life with a sense of completion, realizing that he's at peace. Jim was a selfless person. In a time when IQ and being smart are generally noted by parents or one holding the score, Jim's off-the-charts intelligence stayed under the radar of his folksy and familiar and easygoing way of providing a sense of ease and laughter to those of us who knew he had it. He wasn't trying to be humble. It was just Jim. When Jim's number for the draft came up, it was low. Did he fret? No, he joined the National Guard and pulled his weight for the country. A 38-year veteran worker at Sears, his last 15, he served as a district manager, planning his early retirement at 55. But did he count down the time? Nope. He put his shoulder to the wheel and gained a reputation amongst all those at Sears for helping those independent Sears store owners achieve their own successes. He also created connections, today we'd say networks, by encouraging lifelong friendships within that organization. When he earned more than a gazillion travel awards and other awards and recognition at Sears, did he boast? No, he packed up his beloved high school sweetheart, whom he married in 1973, and hosted her on many wonderful travel adventures. When his 55th year came up for retirement, did he march on? No. He made sure he was really ready 2 years later, and then he embraced it like a man on a mission. This man on a retirement mission had a plan. He found more great buddies, resumed playing golf, hunted deer and neighborhood thieves with wild abandon. He became a legend in his own time, creating memories of helping neighbors clean up after storms, dressing deer, and teaching children how to hunt and fish, identify bugs and snakes, and ride in his red truck. He really did shoot a deer out of the window on a Zoom call, and really did catch and return the gang that broke into his home and others in his neighborhood to the sheriff. And the guys that he caught really did tell the sheriff to catch that crazy man because he was gonna kill him. And he really was identified as a county worker while clearing up trees over the roads of his neighborhood. The stories are true, just like Jim. Closer to home, in fact, in his home, was the woman he loved more than life itself, protected fiercely and gave her pride in his service to others. Yep, there's another story. Imagine a man who's living with Gigi, his wife's cat, who loves his wife and her cat. Imagine Deborah announcing that she will not go on an important trip because her cat is sick and she is going to stay home with that years-old cat, that she will not leave. Yep, Deborah was seriously thinking she needed to stay home with the cat. She didn't say she needed to stay home with Jim. Jim, who knows how much this trip means to her, picks up the ball and in due time assures her, promises her, that Gigi will live for her return. Of course, Deborah trusts this man. He always comes through. Of course, Jim knew no thing about how sick and close to her natural death Gigi was. So while Deborah was happily traveling, Jim noticed that beloved Gigi's behavior had changed. Gigi was not looking good. Jim was not feeling good about that at all. He'd made a promise that he would keep. So he called a neighbor's vet who was on a holiday and begged for help. Then he picked up the cat and drove it to the emergency room, where he explained to the doctor that he did not care how much it cost or what that doctor would have to do. Above all, this cat had to last at least another 4 days, so it would welcome Deborah home from her trip. And Gigi did live for 2.5 years after that surgery, and thousands of dollars. Cool Jim, right? Well, I don't think Jim really found his cool until Deborah returned to meet Gigi, alive and well. A time to love, a time to heal. Jim's love was healing for Gigi and for Deborah. Jim didn't only heal cats with his love, he healed Deborah, and his love continues to heal her. He really thought he would be here and she would not. His tenderness toward her came out to me when I was able to sit with him in a waiting room during one of her tests. I'll admit I do have a soft spot for my longest friend in the whole world. So of course when they took her back, I let go of some tears. So later Jim says to Deborah, "Don't you let Para go back there with me anymore. I can't stand her crying." Softy that he really was, the teddy bear that we love. Jim could put on a strong front and know what to do without blinking, and I loved him for that. And so did the children in his life. Nieces, nephews, neighbors, children of all the friends would find in Jim a friend to love and an amazing teacher of all things cool. Jim challenged the untruth and spoke with a directness that could feel hard at the time. Underneath all that was a man who loved, protected, and cared deeply for those in his life. It would be a hard thing not to care deeply for Jim right back. So here we are, in the loss of an amazing man who married an amazing woman who is continuing to honor his memory, likely as he would honor hers. What do we do? In Deborah's words, it's pretty easy. The best way, she says, to honor Jim is to spend time outdoors, take a child fishing, speak the truth, save money, help those in need, care about your neighbors and your friends and your family, have a drink at 5, tell a joke, and live your life with courage, kindness, and integrity. Amen.
I see trees of green, red roses true. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also the faces of people passing by. I see friends holding hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I see babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful
As many of you know, Jim was an avid golfer who loved being outside. But what you may not know is that while he golfed as a teenager, he gave it up when he got angry and for some reason left his golf clubs in a lake. So he took a break for a long time of golf, but when he planned his retirement, I suggested that he find something else to do. I realized that I should have been more specific. I meant a job, not a hobby. As a golfer, he did not believe in mulligans, which for those of you who do not golf, that's a do-over. Now today, I am so happy that he had both a career at Sears that he loved, and I will say that he really loved the people with whom he worked, and a retirement that suited him perfectly. He could hunt, golf, visit with family and friends, and take care of the house and me. But most of all, I would not do over the time we had together. We started dating when I was 16, got married when I was 21, and I had no idea how much you could miss a person. For me, he always gave me such a sense of security and confidence. He let me go off to all corners of the world because I knew if I got into trouble, he would come and bail me out or get me out of a safari or whatever. He was a man of actions, and his actions spoke louder than his words. He often did acts of kindness that no one knew about. However, the neighbors and friends have written to me about the ways in which they've helped him that I didn't even know. Many have called him their guardian angel. He would be the first in our family to call when they needed help or advice. When our niece and nephew in Texas needed help, Jim was on a plane the next morning. Now, they did call him Uncle Buck for some reason. He would give sound and practical advice. In our neighborhoods, he would ride the streets after a snowstorm to look for downed trees to cut for people who needed a ride to work. One day, a woman in the neighborhood, thinking he was with DOT, advised him to clear all the debris after he was finished cutting that tree. He just nodded, said, "Yes, ma'am," and left it all. Sorry, DOT. He was a good friend and visited those he could, and always talked by phone with those who lived far away. We never had children, but we were so blessed with nieces and nephews, neighborhood children, and as well as former students of mine. Children in the neighborhood loved Jim. He was cool. You never knew what he might say. Even toddlers had been known to run away from home when they saw Jim's truck and visit with him. Fortunately, he would text the parents to let them know that their children were safe. He took them fishing, hunting, or identified bugs and snakes. I think children can sense good people like Jim. A few days after Jim died, children across the street, Wynn and Belden, brought me treats, homemade cards, and a song in the driveway. And Taylor, who's now in New York City, visited me with stories of Jim and called us his second home. I am grateful for the many acts of kindness shown to me since Jim's death in January. I've learned that we often forget what we do kind for others, but the kindness shown to us are permanently imprinted in our hearts. Your food sustained me, Your gift and flowers brought me joy. Your words brought me comfort and at times tears and laughter. Your visits relieved my loneliness and pain. Your actions illustrated your love for Jim and for me. Thank you for being with me through this difficult time of our history. Who knew that we would still be unable to be in person to do this service? Jim would give you this last piece of advice. Don't trust Facebook for medical advice. Read the research and get the damn vaccine. I am grateful to have 3 ministers in my life in this service. My church minister at Binkley, Marcus, Para, who is my oldest, or as she says, longest friend, and Paul, who was lucky enough to be married to my former student and dear friend, Kelly. For the poem and the wonderful music, I will always be thankful. To those of you who spoke, I will hold your words close to my heart. And gratitude must be extended to Megan Hollaback, who created this online video. I never imagined that Jim would die so suddenly in the heights of a global pandemic. Later, I learned that Jim's neurological syndrome was so rare that less than 1 in a million would experience it. I should have been suspicious when almost every doctor at Duke came into the room to examine him. One medical faculty brought his entire class and was so enthralled and excited to tell me that they had only seen this in textbooks. Before I kicked him out and his students in true Jim fashion, I wish that I had told him that Jim was always extraordinary and 1 in a million to me.
There's a house we can build, every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I can pile, each one there to make you smile on a rainy day. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say we've lost our minds. I don't care if they call us crazy. Run away to a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. 1,000,000 dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. 1,000,000 dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, 1,000,000 dreams for the world we're gonna make.
And so we've remembered a man who was grounded in all possible ways, whose cathedral opened up unto the blue Carolina skies, who was at home near a farm pond or on a fairway or in a forest. A man who could appreciate the manifold witness and the beauty of the world. And so, as you leave this garden of memories, may you go forward filled with the knowledge that our lives make the biggest difference to the people that we love, as we have heard today, a gift from God. So go in peace to love and serve the world. Amen.